Back in 1700, India was like the superstar of the world economy. It was a land of immense wealth, culture, and innovation. The subcontinent was renowned for its rich resources, advanced craftsmanship, and bustling trade routes that connected it to the rest of the world. It contributed a massive 27% to the world's wealth. That's bigger than what all of Europe had put together. This was a time when India's economy was thriving, and its influence was felt far and wide. India was famous for its skilled craftspeople, booming businesses, and busy trade routes. The markets were filled with goods that were in high demand across the globe, from spices to textiles and everything in between. But fast forward to 1947, when India finally got its freedom. After centuries of foreign rule, the country was ready to chart its own course. However, the economic landscape had drastically changed. The once mighty economy was in shambles, the infrastructure was in ruins, industries were decimated, and the population was struggling with poverty and unemployment. Its global share had crashed down to just 3%. This dramatic decline was a result of years of exploitation and mismanagement under colonial rule. What went wrong? The short answer: British colonialism. The British systematically dismantled India's economic structure to serve their own interests. For over 200 years, British rule systematically destroyed India's economy. They imposed heavy taxes, exploited resources, and stifled local industries. They turned a wealthy land into a place filled with poverty. The policies they implemented were designed to benefit Britain at the expense of India's prosperity. This video will look at how this economic decline happened. We'll explore the various strategies the British used to drain India's wealth and resources. We'll see how the British took advantage of India's resources, ruined its industries, and made its people poor. The extraction of raw materials and the destruction of local manufacturing were key tactics. From the cloth-making factories of Bengal to the farmlands of Punjab, every sector of the economy was affected. The once thriving textile industry was particularly hard hit. The story of British colonialism is all about taking advantage, exploiting, and completely ignoring the well-being of the Indian people. This exploitation left a lasting impact that India is still recovering from today. To understand how the British took control of India, we need to look at what happened to the Mughal Empire. The Mughal Empire, once a powerful and unified state, began to show signs of weakness and internal strife. This set the stage for a series of events that would eventually lead to British dominance. In 1707, the last great Mughal emperor, Aurangzeb, passed away. His death marked the end of an era and the beginning of a turbulent period for the empire. This led to a big power struggle, throwing the empire into chaos. The central authority weakened and various factions within the empire began to vie for power, leading to widespread instability. Governors wanting more power, regional forces, and invaders all fought for control. The once cohesive empire was now a battleground for different interests, each seeking to carve out their own territory. The once united Mughal state broke apart into many competing pieces. Regional kingdoms and local rulers declared independence, further fragmenting the empire. This instability was a golden opportunity for the British East India Company. They saw the fragmented political landscape as a chance to expand their influence and control. They first came to India for trade, looking for spices and fabrics. The lucrative trade in these goods was their initial focus, but they soon realized the potential for much greater gains. But they quickly realized that a divided India was easy to conquer. The lack of a strong central authority made it easier for them to implement their strategies and gain footholds in various regions. The East India Company, with its own private army and clever tactics, used the situation to their advantage. They employed a combination of military force and strategic alliances to expand their control. They turned different groups against each other, slowly expanding their control through force and manipulation. By exploiting the divisions within India, the British East India Company laid the groundwork for what would become a vast colonial empire. Unlike previous rulers like the Mughals, the British weren't interested in becoming a part of Indian society. They saw India as a giant treasure chest to be looted for the benefit of the British Crown and its businesses. Their goal was simple: take as much wealth as possible and send it back to Britain. To do this, they put in place policies designed to maximize British profits, no matter the cost to India. Important industries were destroyed, traditional crafts were undermined, and Indian merchants were pushed out of the market. The British Raj, as their rule was called, was built on the backs of impoverished Indians. Before the British came, India was famous worldwide for its textiles. The country was a hub of vibrant and diverse textile production, with each region specializing in its unique style and technique. Indian textiles were not just commodities, they were works of art, representing centuries of tradition and craftsmanship. From the delicate muslins of Dhaka, which were so fine they were called woven air, to the vibrant silks of Gujarat, known for their rich colors and intricate patterns, Indian fabrics were highly valued across the globe. Merchants from Europe, the Middle East and Asia flocked to Indian markets to trade for these exquisite textiles. Indian weavers were incredibly skilled, their techniques passed down through generations, creating textiles of exceptional quality and artistry. Each piece was a testament to their dedication and expertise. But the British saw Indian textiles as a threat to their own growing textile industry. They were determined to dominate the global market. They took swift and ruthless action, implementing policies that would devastate the Indian textile industry. They put heavy taxes on Indian textiles imported into Britain, making them too expensive for the average consumer. At the same time, they flooded the Indian market with cheaper, machine-made British textiles, undercutting local producers and driving them out of business. To further cripple the Indian textile industry, the British imposed taxes on Indian weavers, making it nearly impossible for them to sustain their livelihoods. Many weavers were forced to abandon their craft, leaving their looms to gather dust. The once thriving industry was brought to its knees. The once bustling textile centres of India became ghost towns, their silence a stark reminder of the destructive power of colonial greed. The legacy of this devastation is still felt today as the Indian textile industry continues to rebuild and reclaim its former glory. The British Raj's never-ending thirst for revenue led to a cruel system of taxes. Indian farmers, the backbone of the economy, were hit the hardest. The British introduced the zamindari system, which basically turned local landlords into tax collectors for the colonial government. These landlords, often living far away and only caring about profit, had no concern for the struggles of their tenant farmers. Taxes were often set at incredibly high rates, sometimes taking more than half of a farmer's harvest. If they couldn't pay, they faced imprisonment, land confiscation, or even physical abuse. This oppressive system trapped farmers in a cycle of debt and poverty, making the colonial government richer while draining the life out of rural India. British policies, especially in agriculture, made India very vulnerable to famines. The British focus on cash crops like cotton and indigo meant less land was used to grow food. On top of that, the British continued to export grain from India even during droughts, putting profits ahead of the needs of the Indian people. This resulted in a series of terrible famines that killed millions of Indians. They died not because there wasn't enough food, but because of a system that prioritized British profits over Indian lives. The British response to these famines was often heartless and insufficient, showing how little they cared about the suffering of the Indian people. It's important to compare British rule with earlier empires in India, like the Mughals. While the Mughals also conquered and taxed, their approach was very different from the British. The Mughals, for the most part, saw themselves as rulers of India, not just plunderers. They invested in infrastructure, supported the arts, and tried to become a part of the existing social structure. The British, on the other hand, were only interested in taking. Their main goal was to make Britain richer, not to improve the lives of their Indian subjects. This fundamental difference explains why India, despite its imperfections, remained prosperous and vibrant under Mughal rule, while it fell into poverty and despair under British colonialism. The British often boast about building India's railway network as a positive contribution of their rule. However, a closer look reveals that even this seemingly beneficial project mainly served British interests. The railways weren't built to connect Indians to each other, but to connect the country's interior to its ports. This made it easier to export raw materials and import British manufactured goods. Moreover, the railways were largely funded by Indian taxpayers, who were then made to pay to use a system designed to benefit British businesses. Instead of being a symbol of progress, the railways were another tool the British used for economic exploitation. In 1947, India finally broke free from British colonialism. The road ahead was challenging, the country was poor, its industries were in ruins, and its people were deeply affected by decades of colonial oppression. Yet, in the decades since independence, India has made incredible progress. While challenges remain, India is no longer the impoverished nation it was under British rule. Its economy is growing, its people are better educated, and its voice is heard more and more on the world stage. India's journey since 1947 shows the resilience of its people and their determination to create a better future. It also serves as a powerful reminder of the devastating legacy of colonialism and the importance of remembering the past as we face the challenges of the present.